Attention, all Berserk gamers. Guts Berserk is in grave danger and needs your help. Trapped in a poorly made anime while Griffith is off making a fake new Band of the Hawk. Now, he's gonna need your credit card number, the expiration date, and the 3 numbers on the back, along with a red beret. So, remember, Griffith did everything wrong.
Who doesn't love beating a dead horse? You know, after Berserk 2016 ended, I thought maybe they'll be able to improve on for 2017. They could have possibly been under-budgeted and understaffed, and this could have been rushed out the door. Maybe they didn't know the technology too well, and now that they have some experience, they'll be able to make it better, because inexperience with the tools you use to make your series isn't something mutually exclusive to anime production. Maybe 2017 will come out and we'll just remember 2016 as that bad mistake that unfortunately had to happen to get the good stuff. I was fucking stupid for thinking this. Not only is it bad, it's actually even worse. Back in the 2016 video, I talked about the interviews with the producer during the 2016 anime's production. He mentioned how there was a 2D studio and a 3D studio, and I raised the idea that they could have been working against each other, creating more issues due to them not being on the same page and being completely separate studios. Now we're going to have a look at this article that came out after the production of the 2017 anime, which brings to light how much of a colossal clusterfuck this production was. Genba, the CGI team, had never been in charge of a full-length anime production before. They'd only worked previously as production assistants for CGI and background creation along with VFX production. There's nothing inherently wrong with having an inexperienced new team to work on something. It's definitely great to allow new people into the scene and try to do new things and prove themselves. It's really unfortunate that they just had so many issues pile up and they were so inexperienced with what they were doing that it became such a fucking mess. Berserk's production started in spring of 2015, but it wasn't until late December did they even decide how they wanted the show to look. A hybridization between 2D and 3D was what Shin Itagaki strove for, trying to replicate Miura's art style with highly detailed models and backgrounds, but in doing this caused conflicts at Genba. Despite opposition from the staff, worrying that the style wouldn't be financially and technically feasible, Itagaki still pursued this idea, and in doing so wasted a lot of the team's time. The premiere date for the first season was July 1st, 2016, and due to so much time wasting during pre-production, they wasted over half a year of production time. Then, having NBC Universal requiring them to produce a trailer, they hadn't even decided how the show was going to look yet. This is why the first trailer we ever saw looks vastly different from what the show we got. Eventually, the staff would reach a compromise with Itagaki and how they wanted the show to end up looking, but in doing so meant they had to scrap everything they made for the trailer, because the trailer was made in August, but they didn't reach this compromise until December. This meant that they had to create 150 new character models, including battle-damaged versions of them. You know, the ones they kept forgetting to include when they would change scenes. The studio began making the new models in January, only starting to animate them in March, 4 months before the release of the anime. Sadly, the production issues only got worse from here on out. Not only were the highly detailed models causing too much strain on the viewport and their 3ds Max software, they were having trouble even rendering the models at all. And since they only had 4 months until the release date, they had no time to work on a new solution. So they were forced to simplify these models that were originally intended to replicate as much detail from the manga as possible. They intended to use a system called Global Illumination, a system that calculates the reflections of light and how they interact with objects around them to create more of a realistic lighting setting. For example, let's say there's a character in a suit of armor standing near a light source, and there's another character standing right next to them. The light that's shining onto the armor would then reflect onto the character standing next to them. So the second character is being illuminated by both the light source and the reflection off the body of armor. And having the computer do this all on its own, this saves time for the animators so they don't have to go in and program the lighting for each individual scene. At least that's my understanding of how this works based on the Unity design doc's explanation. So for all I know, this could be completely different from what they're trying to do. With the deadline approaching fast, they needed to render out these backgrounds in less than 10 minutes, which was not nearly enough time for the utilities. So that meant they had to remove Global Illumination, and with its exclusion, Berserk's backgrounds would never stand out like they were originally intended to, coming off way more flatter and a lot duller. Itagaki wanted to implement what the staff referred to as as touch-up lines. This is the hatch mark shading that you could see on all the characters in the anime. These effects, along with all of the 2D sections of the anime, are done by the second studio, Millipens. Originally, these hatch marks were supposed to be applied using Adobe After Effects, but this didn't always work, specifically on swords, armor, and other detailed metallic objects, requiring the staff to go and manually apply these textures. Oh my god, those poor overworked animators. It's no wonder this industry's fucked. The biggest problem with this production wasn't the fact that they were understaffed. They had a decent size. It's the fact that they were split between so many groups and companies that they had to start making unique tools so they could all work between each other with different rigging software outside of Genba. With all these issues and all the time they wasted leading up to them, this left them without the ability to search for other options, like possibly using different software that would allow them to make what they originally envisioned. Now, before we start pointing fingers and putting all the blame on Shin Itagaki, I do want to give him some props. I deeply respect any director that is willing to fight for their artistic vision instead of being a yes man to the higher-ups, like a lot of Hollywood directors are, but a great director knows when they need to make the compromises in order for their project to be a success and aren't too married to the images in their head. Now I want to discuss something I haven't seen anyone else ever really touch on, and that's the dub. I don't usually have issues with dubs. I occasionally check them out towards series that I really like just to see what they did. Like, I usually check out each part of the JoJo dubs just to see who they got to play the characters. One of the biggest critiques that English dubs get, besides the fact that they occasionally cast people that aren't a good fit for the character, is how artificial they sound. You can't separate the idea that this is just someone speaking in a booth rather than the character actually being there. And this dub really suffers from that. And I wouldn't really put this at fault to the audio technicians at Funimation. They probably did the best they could with what they had. The fact that the sound design for this anime is so fucking atrocious that no matter what they would have done, it would have sounded inorganic no matter what. The Japanese dub even suffers from this issue. The thing that surprises me the most is the fact that Funimation even wanted to dub this. I can't imagine people are actually going out to buy the Blu-rays of this. Not to mention they're $60 fucking dollars. I highly doubt they expect this to make any money at all and are probably just doing this for a tax write-off. I brought this up in the 2016 video, and as everyone else has mentioned in any discussion surrounding this anime ever, holy shit does this camera not stop moving. The 2017 season actually had some really nice shots that I liked, but the team either didn't have the restraint or didn't understand what they were doing and just kept the camera moving, ruining the impact that any of these scenes could have ever possibly had. So to remove some of the redundancy of an already redundant video, I'm just going to show the biggest offenders in my eyes in a little montage for the sake of brevity and removing as much repetition as possible. The middle of this season is just so boring. It's not even like 2016 where it was a non-stop fucking train wreck of awfulness. The middle episodes are just flat, dull, and all around lifeless. Of course they look like shit because the whole show does, but there isn't anything extremely bad to the point where you're like, what the fuck is going on? Or you're just laughing at it because it's so fucking bad you can't believe that this shit was actually aired on TV. The first 2 minutes of episode 13 actually look pretty good, until you see Zod, where he's just a tweening PNG. It looks like a Kill a Kill gag, except this wasn't done with the intention of comedy. Goto's the lucky one here. He gets to be spared from this fucking nightmare. One of the largest turning points for Guts' character is after the Tower of Conviction, where he sees Griffith being resurrected in his new body. For a second, he does not feel the urge to kill him anymore. Later, this is driving Guts insane, because up until now, his whole point of existence is to get his revenge on Griffith for what he did to the Band of the Hawk. So can you guess what music they accompanied this scene in the anime with? Jazz. Is Guts having an existential crisis, contemplating his purpose and what's keeping him going, or is he trying to be fucking serenaded? Hey, post-production Cvit here. After going back and listening to the soundtrack, the song isn't really jazz. It's more like a noir pulpy sound. It just sounded more like jazz to me from the little snippet we actually hear because the mix is so terrible in the episode. Just thought I'd clarify that for anyone who goes back and is like, what the fuck, there isn't a jazz song in here. But my point still stands that it's an awful inclusion for the scene. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the video so far, and let's get back to that.
Damn, if only they could both fit in this scene, maybe you could see what the fuck's going on.
Anytime there's even a moderately tense scene, they use this same violin track over and over and over again. It's like one stanza they record and they're like, well, this is all we got, so we gotta make the scene tense. By the time we're 13 episodes in, I'm so sick of hearing this, but they used it for all 24 episodes that I just wish I was fucking deaf by the end. This episode also has hands down the worst fight scene I've ever seen in any anime ever. The only thing I can think that could rival it is this from Soul Eater 9. If people know a fight scene that they think could top this, please let me know. I want to see something that'll make me think this is a Donnie Yen film compared to what you showed me. This episode also has terrible compression issues, where there's artifacting everywhere, and it's not just the rips of the episodes that I obtained through very legal channels. It's all the versions I've seen, except for the Blu-rays, which I will never fucking buy. Knowing what I mentioned earlier from the article mentioning how they had to render out each scene in under 10 minutes, we can infer that probably one of these few things happened. Number one, they lowered the quality of the overall episode so they could render this out faster, because none of the other episodes have this noticeable artifacting and hyper compression. And this is probably due to the snow effects, because specifically in a lot of the fight scenes in the snow is where a lot of the artifacting is. Number two, this is just how the snow is supposed to look, but it's so awful it just looks like the episode is blurry. This could just be the subtitles from the rip I got, and this makes more sense in Japanese, but I think how they have Guts saying that you don't loathe Griffith to Rickert instead of you can never hate Griffith like it does in the manga completely changes the scene and the dynamic going forward for these two characters. This is one of the changes though that I think is more arguable between people, how they could interpret this line in different ways compared to a lot of the other mistakes and changes where it's just cut content. I do think this line is up for some debate whether it is a change for the better or worse. I'm still leaning towards they should have had it how it originally was, because that sounded a lot better. It makes a lot more sense going forward for Rickert's character arc, none which we get to see in the anime. Man, nothing I love more than having all the action happen outside of the frame. Did they cut away fast because this was too complex for them to animate and they started and then gave up halfway through? Because that's what it really looks like. Again, with weird pacing issues and episode structure, they sequence break the story, which had a more cohesive flow of time and events in the manga, and then made it completely jumbled up in the anime, and I don't understand why they would do this. Chapter 182 is Griffith showing up and appearing as the Hawk of Light. 183, he kills the Kushin leader and meets Locust. 184 is him meeting the rest of the apostles that will join the Neo Band of the Hawk or the Neo Band of the Falcon or whatever the official translation is now. Then cuts to Shiro talking about the Age of Darkness that will soon come. 185 and 186 is all about Farnice growing up and the backstory with her and Serpico. Chapters 187 through 191 are Guts and Casca's journey through Midland, having Guts realize how difficult it is to fight every night and try to take care of Casca like this alone, and he's slowly losing his mind and being possessed by the inner demon and being possessed by other demons at night, which then creates a rift between him and Casca, now requiring him to drag Casca around with a rope tied around her arms. We don't really have a good estimate how long this period is between these chapters, but at least it is a few days. So I'm going to range this at 3 to 4 days to at most the whole season of winter, since 187 and 188 are called Winter's Journey. You can see snow on the trees, and then in 190 and 191 you do not see snow, and you see leaves starting to grow on trees. Little details like that that make me believe maybe this is starting to be the end of winter or possibly spring. Now in the anime, they have Griffith show up, and then they immediately cut away before he attacks the Kushians to Guts and Casca during the first night of them camping, where he is attacked by the Incubus, then jumping to Farnice and Serpico, having their entire backstory, then jump back to Guts and Casca, assumingly the next day, because they did cut a few pages from the manga where it shows Guts fighting in different locations, then jump back to Griffith fighting the Kushians, which is ranging from 1 or 2 days to an entire season earlier. And it finally ends with Guts running into Farnice and Serpico and them asking if they can join him on his journey, which is even later than the last time we saw Guts and Casca traveling alone. Now, did that explanation sound convoluted and stupid? Because watching those events happen in real time is just as dumb. I just don't understand what they achieved from rearranging the story like this. You don't even really have to storyboard out this anime. You have the entire framework in picture form in a manga. How do you fuck that up? I guess they didn't want to make Farnice out to be too much of a psychopath and have people find her completely unsympathetic, so they removed the scene of her sacrificing little animals to the statue in the tree, which led her to becoming a religious zealot. She's not even moving forward there. For once, they took the manga panels a little too literal, having most of Farnice and Serpico's flashbacks just being empty voids of white or black. Even in scenes they keep in, there's huge dialogue cuts, like Serpico's mother in the flashbacks. In the manga, she's actually talking to him as he sets her on fire at the stake to prove his innocence. But in the anime, all she does is make incoherent noises. I guess they took a page out of David Cage's book of depicting the mentally ill.
Oh no! I hear one coming! He's getting so close! Breathe, Carla. Don't move.
Oh, come on. They removed the best scene where Farnice sees Puck for the first time? Wow, Griffith, it's really amazing you stabbed that guy through the head, and the fact that there's no blood on your blade. Kinda like how there's almost never blood in this anime except when it explodes at people like a jelly bomb. Since we last saw Zod fighting Guts, he somehow managed to contract jaundice, so in half the shots and these scenes, he's green. Rakshas actually looks really good, surprisingly. I was fully expecting him to look like the goo from last season. One of the little details they did that I actually really like is how Griffith looks like he's illuminated by his own light source when he's in the camp with the spirits of the dead soldiers, showing them to their families for the last time. I always interpreted the manga panels like, yeah, he's got this otherworldly glow around him, which is what is bringing more people in to think that he is actually the savior. Normally it would look weird to have a character that looks like they have their own light source compared to everybody else, but this I think is really good. One of the few times I feel like either this was a happy accident or they fully understood what they were doing. Or character building that they removed from Farnice in the anime is how she felt useless trying to take care of Casca, and how hard it was for her to lower her guard and rely on others, which was supposed to mirror how Guts felt with allowing Farnice, Serpico, and Isidro to join them on his journey. There were quite a few people defending how the Dragon Slayer sounds and thinking the clang is actually really good and makes sense. So if this is the sound that the Dragon Slayer makes, a giant hunk of metal against the body of a young girl, then why would Grunbel's hammer make the same exact sound hitting against a metal shield, which doubles over as a cannon? The clang sound makes the most sense is when Grunbel's hammer slams into the Dragon Slayer when it's held against Guts' chest. I just can't take these ogres seriously due to the fact that they for some reason made their eyes glowing white. They just draw so much attention to them and stand out because everything else on the ogre itself, along with the color choices they use for the scenes they show up in, are very dark muted grays, browns, and in some cases purples. So the bright white will draw the attention of the viewer towards them. They're like big red circles in YouTube thumbnails. In the manga, their eyes are bloodshot, almost completely black, because that's not the focal point of what the viewer is supposed to be looking at on these pages. They weren't colored with the intention of having the reader's eyes drawn to them. All I could think of when I see these ogres is they have googly eyes on them. Oh hey look, it's the Grey Baylet. If only they included the arc where Guts got it from. I guess now that we're 19 episodes in, they finally realized, hey, maybe we should hold the frame for a little bit. But all they do is just freeze frame it while leaving all the sounds going in the background, and it just looks so awkward. I don't even think that it's an issue with freeze framing, because plenty of anime have done it in the past. Most notably, Dragon Ball did this all the time. It's just that these shots that they froze at are so bland and dull. There's no vignetting or interesting angles or speed lines, anything to make it pop more. They could have made the frames really pop more by having like water vignetting from tides that look like it's crashing against the camera, or they could have just done close-up shots of the characters' faces but left things moving in the background, since in the final product we could actually still hear the water running, which really makes me think that they had these scenes and were like, let's just freeze frame it just to add some spice to these scenes because it's just so dull, and it comes off we're just going through the motions for these last few episodes. All the really cool monsters and spirit designs that the gang runs into while in Clipoth have been removed, but at least Schnoz made it in. Episode 21 is where shit starts to really hit the fan and the quality of the show just absolutely plummets through the fucking floor. This is where 90% of the gifts from this season come from, is from episode 21 onwards. I'm assuming this is because no one was buying the Blu-rays and then the budget for the rest of the episodes just dried up and they were stuck with nothing. For those who are unaware, for the industry to recoup its costs for making an anime, they usually release DVDs or Blu-rays containing 2 to 4 episodes for about 7,000 yen. This is roughly $63 US at the time of recording. And with how the last few episodes have been going, I doubt any of the whales or otaku were actually going to be willing to spend 7,000 yen for these piece of shit Blu-rays. The quality of these episodes have gone down so much that you even hear walking sound effects when no one is moving. Like, did someone just miss a line on the timeline or just leave it there and forget to remove it? That's some simple shit you see in fucking post-production. Oh god, I'm so sorry, Berserk Armor. You didn't deserve this. What did they do to you? Seriously, the Berserk Armor is probably one of the coolest pieces of armor ever. And this was a pretty necessary upgrade for Guts to get if he actually wanted to continue on his journey and try to take on the God Hand. One of my biggest issues with a lot of anime and manga, specifically shonen, is they just throw new power-ups at characters all the time. Half the time they don't feel justified and then they just completely invalidate earlier ones. Hey Jimmy, the ratings are down. Let's give Goku a new form. Naruto close to the end really had this issue where he just kept gaining new forms every fucking minute, it felt like, to the point where he was so strong and overpowered that once they began doing filler episodes, because it's a fucking Shonen Jump anime, of course they're gonna do filler, they had to flash back to pre-Rasengan learned Naruto, because there's nowhere else in the story for them to go. What are you gonna have him fucking do the T-race when he's in Sage mode? Oh no, these 4 little bandits have got these kids hostage. It's a good thing that I could just turn into a big fucking kaiju. This is honestly a topic for another video that I've wanted to do for a while, so maybe eventually I'll get to it. But back to bitching about this anime. Whoever they got to voice the Beast of Darkness just sounds so fucking uninterested. Every line he delivers is so flat. You'd think he'd have any sort of emotional impact in his voice, considering he's the manifestation of Guts' fury and rage. The one thing that's been consistently good though, from 2016 and 2017, is the still images at the end. They always look so nice and detailed. My favorite is definitely episode 21's, with Guts being possessed by the Beast of Darkness in the armor, which I'm a little hesitant to give praise for at the same time because it is just a colored rendition of the manga panel, and it shows that they were really proud of it by the fact that they used it again in the next episode, which they didn't do before and never do again. And the fact that they reused it was really awkward, like they didn't even implement it well. If they wanted to make this work, what they really need to do is have Guts' head move up for a few more frames and then have it fade or some sort of other transition into the still. Because as it is right now, it's just an awkward jump from where Guts' head is facing down and then directly up for the still. With how the helm of the Berserk armor is shaped, the snout gives the viewers a point of reference, which makes the jump even more noticeable and awkward to even the most untrained of eyes. It's so odd to me that they didn't think to add any sort of transition. Having it go from regular animation to then these still images with greater detail was something that the 1997 anime did a lot. It was the prime technique that the show used to its advantage to try to replicate the art style as much as they possibly could with the little budget that they had. You think Genba would have looked back and be like, maybe we should just add anything here. Like I could just put an adaptive transition or a cross dissolve here in Premiere and this doesn't take any effort. I'm not a trained professional. I'm someone who's self-taught how to edit, and I can clearly tell that this is an issue and see a simple solution to it. This scene is almost made bearable thanks to the music used in it. Ash Crow is an excellent song, and going back and listening to the OST in a vacuum looking for background music for the video, I realized most of these songs are actually pretty good. It's more in part that they were just poorly incorporated into scenes. Hell, the intro is even pretty catchy. I'd probably go back and put this into a rock playlist and listen to it occasionally. But again, it's just a poor fit for the show and the tone it's trying to go for. Then after episode 21, we have a fucking recap episode. There's literally nothing to fucking talk about here. It's just they waste your fucking time. Not enough has even fucking happened to warrant a recap. If I didn't already know that this was supposed to be the Beast of Darkness made out of flames, I would just be like, what the fuck am I even looking at here? The flame manifestation of Guts' spirit is also completely fucked. It's so frantic in its movement that you can't even make out what it is. And the color colors are too similar that you can't make out the eye motif either that the Beast of Darkness and the Berserker armor have on them. There's so many times throughout this entire anime, both 2016 and 2017, where they have characters either running in the foreground or the background, and I put running in very big quotation marks because they have a walk cycle, but the characters don't actually ever gain any distance. Worst instance of this in my mind is when Laban and the Arkham Knights are running away from the alligator men in the sewers of the demon-controlled Wyndham. After Laban and the Knights are saved by Locust and Irvine, the rest of the fighting in the city, Griffith rescuing Princess Charlotte, and the introduction of Ganishka and the Daka are all removed, all coming from 6 removed chapters of chapter 230 through 236. It makes sense they removed all of Ganesha's presence in the rest of the anime because there's no fucking way this is getting a 3rd season. No point in setting up things that are never gonna happen. Okay, let's just say that everything I've mentioned up until now that's been cut is negligible. The dumbest removal from this anime, in my mind, is definitely the fact they removed the fucking Moonchild. Why? What does this achieve? Gee, I hope this doesn't have any more relevancy in the plot later. The Kraken is also super bizarre to me. It looks like it's not even from this anime. It's like they took this asset from some website that just generates monster models and dumped it into the anime scene. It looks so out of place, like it has its own light source and no shadows. I look at it and all I could think of is just the rejected Barney design. Serpico and Isidro's conversation about the legend of the Band of the Hawk has been removed. The one where Isidro talks about how he looks up to the raid leader who slayed over 1,000 men, as it cuts to Guts looking embarrassed and muttering to himself about how the story has been embellished over the years. Sometimes it really feels like as the camera's panning down in a scene, the landscape is moving along with it. It makes me think of a pop-up picture book with 2 different flaps that move the foreground and the background. But every time they do it in this, the camera's usually panning horizontally or vertically, having the foreground move along with it, but then having the background move opposite to the camera's movement. So it creates this weird overlap feeling where it doesn't create distance, it feels like there's 2 things just smushed right on top of each other. I find this issue to be most predominant during the fight with the trolls and ogres in the village, especially when the gang is running away from the trolls. Bonebeard, I know you're supposed to be a grimy ass motherfucker with scurvy, well what the fuck did they do to your face, dude? Snake from MGS1 has a more detailed face than you. When Isidro and Mule are fighting Bonebeard on the docks, instead of Azan waking up on the boat and saving them, Puck uses Solar Flare, allowing them to run away. For the last 2 minutes of the 24th episode, it's all in 2D, and it doesn't look all that bad. These last 2 minutes really show the potential that this series has. It's just that they gave it to the wrong studio. And conveniently, the anime cuts off right before we get to the boat arc.
Alex, it's time to get on the boat.
No, I don't want to get on the boat. Please, anything but that.
This is for your own good, sweetie.
No, I don't want to be on a hiatus for 7 years. No!
Fuck, it's cold.